Greetings, Jedi Wayfarers and Sith Mystics. You are cordially invited to another episode of Reading with the Revanchist, where I will read you a story set in the Star Wars Expanded Universe. So, without further ado, grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and allow me to whisk you to a galaxy far, far away. Delicious.
Today we'll be reading a recording of Sar Agorn from Jedi vs. Sith, The Essential Guide to the Force, by Ryder Windham.
Voice activation Tionne Solusar, commence recording 40 ABY. One of the oldest records of a Dark Jedi comes to us via the Great Holocron from the Jedi Consular Sar Agorn. As previously noted, Sar Agorn was counted among the earliest Jedi during the dawn of the Republic. Upon first sight of Agorn's hologrammic representation, most assume that his appearance is the result of a degraded image, but light wave analysis indicates otherwise. It seems he was a most unusual being, an apparently bulbous, soft creature who lacked limbs or facial features and had greenish gases continually surrounding his form, wholly unlike any species known today. The following recording dates back to approximately 500 years before the first great schism that divided the Jedi, and 18,100 years before the exiled Dark Jedi arrived in Sith space, at a time when the Jedi may have still been developing their terminology for the Force. Although the dark side is not mentioned by name in Sar Agorn's record, his descriptions leave little doubt about the nature of the shadows.
You ask of my first awareness of evil. That is difficult for me to say. It is not that my memory fails me, but that memories are based on our perceptions at specific moments. Are there not beings, things, or places that you regarded as evil when you were young, but that you subsequently determined were not evil at all? Did you eventually forgive the inconsiderate relative, the howling wind, and the ominous structures that never really posed a threat to you except in your own imagination? Furthermore, how shall we define evil? The common definition is that which is profoundly immoral or wrong, such as the desire to deliberately cause great harm, pain, or upset. But let me ask, if I told you that right now, at this very moment, your involuntary breathing was killing sentient microscopic innocents, would you choose to continue breathing? And even if you found a way to end the massacre, would it disturb you if you were unable to convince the microscopic survivors that you never meant them harm, and that they and their descendants would consider you evil and wish you dead for the devastation you brought to their loved ones and civilization? You say that I tend to answer questions with too many questions in return. Well, how else will you learn to think for yourself? Oh, so you wanted to know if I have ever known of a Jedi who turned to evil. You might have asked that in the first place. For that question, I have a most specific answer. The Jedi Cope Shikrill. First, let me say that this is a most unusual case. As Jedi, we are bonded by our agreement to use our powers for the goodness of all beings, not for personal gain or to exploit others. Yes, there are times when one is tempted to use the Force simply because one can, but if one does not know when and where to draw the line, then ask more questions and I shall draw it for you. Now, about Cope Shikrill. My fellow Jedi and I had been searching for Force users like ourselves in the outlying system of the Corellian sector when we found young Shikrill on Sarcophagus, the graveyard moon of Socoria. At the time, the boy was living with his family, who were groundskeepers. We had not found him by accident, but by way of a report from a Solonian widower who claimed to have witnessed Shikrill use telekinesis to lower his wife's coffin into an open grave. Shikrill seemed like a most unassuming child, but was indeed able to move objects through the air with little difficulty. Although some families had been reluctant to allow their children to join the Jedi, Shikrill's parents were most accommodating and even seemed genuinely grateful to us for granting their son the opportunity to rise above his station on Sarcophagus. And so the boy left with us to train as a Jedi. He was such a bright child, always displayed a pleasant disposition when he asked for more lessons, never asked a wrong question or gave a wrong answer, always helped with chores, never complained. In fact, over the course of 8 years of training, he never gave us any cause for caution or reason to imagine why his parents might have been eager for him to leave Sarcophagus. I am getting ahead of myself. The Jedi Watchman, Nuklayu of Esselies, was the first of my peers to express some concern about Shikrill. Nuklayu had been instructing a group of Jedi, including Shai-Krill, in how to use the Force to throw a new bladed weapon of his own design at wooden targets. After the lesson was over, Nuk Layu confided to me that Shai-Krill repeatedly hit his targets with extreme precision. I conveyed to Nuk Layu that I was not surprised, as Shai-Krill was one of our most promising Jedi. But Nuk Layu said to me, "You do not understand. I designed the weapon, and it still took me nearly 2 months to throw it with consistent accuracy. Cope Shai-Krill's ability is not merely uncanny, it is unnatural." Nuk Layu returned to Esseles, leaving us with samples of his new blade, and leaving me with some inclination to pay closer attention to Shai-Krill, who was still training to be a Jedi Watchman himself. In the weeks that followed, I noticed no significant change in Shai-Krill's behavior. Then, one night, I found him entertaining a trio of younger trainees, a Fia, a human, and an Osaurian, with a shadow play near a campfire. Shai-Krill stood between the fire and a stone wall, using hand gestures to make lively silhouettes that told a story against the wall's surface. It was a very compelling tale about 2 brothers, one good and one bad. The good brother wanted to plant seeds and grow vegetables, but the bad brother wanted to eat all the seeds. Lending his voice to the narration, Shai-Krill made the good brother sound very noble and scholarly, and the bad brother sound like an illiterate oaf. The bad brother made the trainees laugh. Now you may have noticed by my hologramic representation that I am unlike most common species, as I am without appendages or a complex physiognomy. Although I had always believed that my natural condition did not in any way impede my abilities as a Jedi, I suddenly felt something I had never felt before as I watched Shai-Krill's hands flutter and dance and cast shadows. Envy. I wished I had hands so that I might tell such a story too, with the skill and grace of the young Shai-Krill, and then I felt something else. Shame. Confused, I returned to my quarters to contemplate what had transpired and to meditate. 23 minutes later, my meditation was interrupted by the sound of screaming. The screaming attracted all the Jedi in our camp, and we raced to the area where I'd left Shai-Krill and his small audience. There we found Shai-Krill and 2 of the trainees lying on the ground covered in blood. The 3rd trainee, the Nosaurian, was standing amidst the bodies gripping one of Nuk Layu's weapons in his hands. It was the Nosaurian who was screaming, and it appeared that he had used the weapon's blade to slash the others. He bellowed,
"The shadows are in my head. Get them out."
And then he slit his own throat and collapsed. Our medics did what they could. The 3 trainees died. Only Shai-Krill survived. The weeks passed. Shai-Krill was still in bandages when I encouraged him to join me for a constitutional. He did not seem puzzled or surprised when I brought him to the site where the trainees had perished. There I conveyed to him that I had witnessed part of his shadow play, and that I had no idea he was such an accomplished storyteller. And with some boldness, I inquired if the shadows ever spoke to him. He answered, "You know they speak to me. They spoke to you too, I heard them. They made you wish you had hands of your own." I asked him how long he had been listening to the shadows. He said, "If you want to know whether the shadows spoke to me before or after I became a Jedi, I can't say." I asked if he controlled the shadows, or if they controlled him. He said, "The shadows and I are the 2 brothers. One wants to plant the seeds, one wants to eat the seeds." Remembering his shadow play, I asked him whether he was the good brother or the bad brother. He said, "I am the brother who lived, and now it is time for you to join the shadows." I suddenly realized that I felt quite cold. Dread flooded over me and a sickness spread within, but these feelings ended with supreme quickness as Shai-Krill's head separated from his body, having met the honed edge of Nuk Layu's blade. It was Nuk Layu himself who'd thrown the weapon from his hiding spot, for I had summoned him from Esseles when we buried the trainees. Somehow, both of us instinctively knew that Shai-Krill was responsible for the trainees' deaths, and that the only way to end his evil ways was to end his very life. I traveled to Sarcophagus to inform Shai-Krill's parents that their son was dead, allowing them to believe that he had died honorably. But yes, I had another motive for meeting the parents. I wanted to find out if the evil that seemed to possess Shai-Krill had preceded his recruitment to the Jedi. As delicately as I could, I inquired as to whether Shai-Krill had a brother. Indeed, I learned that they had had another son, but he had died 3 years before Cope was born. I asked if young Cope had ever talked to an imaginary friend, or if he had ever shared his shadow's stories with them. The parents were polite, but seemed altogether baffled by these questions, and so I left them on their tomb world. Just as the Force flows through us all, so do we all have aspects that are positive and negative. but a Jedi knows the difference between light, darkness, and the shadows in between. Jedi cannot wrestle with decisions or struggle to uphold our ideals. We must know that what we do is good and just, and should we make mistakes, we must rectify those mistakes. What made Shikril's innards so different, so wretched and weak, that he would yield to shadows, embrace them, let them overwhelm him? Why would he live amongst us for more than 9 years, learn our ways and methods, only to eventually kill those unfortunate trainees? Did these shadows he spoke of come from within himself, and did they die with him, or do they continue to exist beyond his death? I do not know, and I have no desire to venture into the shadows where one might find the answers. But I do know that we, the Jedi, must be better and stronger than killers of children. We must be more. It is not our purpose to understand such shadows, but it is our purpose to use our light to extinguish them. I hope you've enjoyed this reading of a recording from Sar Agorn.